Welcome to the Love and Grace Podcast. My name is Joel Menken, and today I've got in studio Daisy.
Hello there.
And we have via Zoom Marquetta. How are you doing,
Hey, friend. I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. I just have I wanted to start off the conversation. Let me backtrack, give you guys a bigger point of view. Daisy is Theus's wonderful wife, and Theus has been on a few times already. And Marquetta is Mark Day's sister. So Mark Day has been on as well. So just wanted to give you some context before we dug too deep in here. Let's start off with, did you guys grow up in a Christian home?
Yeah. I grew up Catholic. My great-grandma was a devout Catholic. So by the time I was 4 years old, I was reciting Lord's Prayer, Apostles' Creed, all that stuff. With my parents, they were once-a-year Catholics. So we went to church when they felt like it. Kind of fell away from that when I was in college, and that's how I was growing up.
How about you, Kui?
So with my family, we did grow up Christian. I'm pretty sure my brother had touched on this before. Like, even though we said we were Christian, we were those kids that we didn't like to go to church because, well, I shouldn't say we didn't like to, but it was more like being forced to go on Sundays. We're like, oh my gosh, like we have to wake up this early. We're still tired, going to be in this sermon for like an hour or so. Cause like back then our sermons would go like more than an hour, and it felt like it was just dragging on forever. But we still liked it. And then my mom was the type of person, like after church was over with, we'd still be there for another 3 hours because she'd be talking to everybody there. So it was nice.
Yeah, I remember. For me, it was always, hey, where are we going out to eat to hang out with everybody? Mm-hmm. What led you to a place where you had an encounter with Jesus?
For me, it was high school. Because, I mean, growing up Catholic, you're around people who are just sitting there staring straight for an hour and a half. So you don't really get to encounter anything. Mm-hmm. But when I got in high school and I got my license, I got my first car, I finally had the freedom to just go out and do what I wanted to. And in the mornings, we lived by the beach, so I would actually go to a local beach a couple blocks away from my parents' house, and I would just sit there and watch the sunrise before driving over to school. And I think that was my first encounter, just focusing on nature and how beautiful God has made everything for us. And I actually started crying. I was like sitting there with my Burger King breakfast, like tearing up in the car watching the sunrise. And that was my very first encounter that I remember.
How about you, Kui?
That's so beautiful, especially seeing a sunset like that. So as I mentioned before, we grew up in a Christian household, but it was more, my understanding of Christianity was more like you have to be good in order to go to heaven. If you do bad, you go to hell type thing. But I think what made it surreal for me was when we were in youth group, and it was one of our first years going to this summer camp called Impact. We would go to Mishindo in Michigan. And it was in one worship service that they had like this band come out and play. And like growing up within our household, we were so used to listening to gospel music, which was still good. But like, I don't know, when we went to this summer camp, it was more like that contemporary type of Christian music that we got into listening more. And the music, I don't know, it brought me to this place of like, wow, I feel this presence, like being in a room with more people, with a lot of these people worshiping Jesus too. Like the presence felt more surreal for me. Like it felt like, wow, God is real. Like I knew God was real, but it felt more like, wow, he's here. He's present with me right now. And that's what made me feel like like my whole understanding of Christianity changed. So, yeah.
So now as adults, what's the thing that you can definitely feel like you're going down the right path of following Christianity? What is that thing that really keeps you going and makes you feel like you're doing the right thing?
For me, it's relationships with people, even strangers, just because before I would never talk to strangers. I would just be like, I'm going to do my own thing over here. But now that, I've been with Theos for, 12 years, he's a huge influence in my life. Just his love for people has definitely rubbed off on me. And so when I see people, I just want to have an encounter with them, have a relationship with them. It's not just a simple, oh, hey, how's the weather? Cool, bye. It's, how are you doing? How's this? How's that? I want to get to know you. And I feel like a sense of peace when I do it. Whereas before, I would get so nervous, like my palms would sweat, I'd get like sweaty armpits, like I don't want to do this, I would hyperventilate. But it's just total peace now when I talk to people. And it feels like I'm doing the right thing because I'm focusing on the person. And I think that's what I've learned through this past 12 years of just finding my relationship with God.
How about you, Kui? What's been that one thing that's kept you in Christianity versus going off and doing whatever you want now as an adult outside of your parents' home?
So I was the type of person, if I get anxious, I like to write. I guess you could say like it's journaling, but it's more like writing a letter to God. And at the time, after I moved out of my parents' house and everything, and wanted to still continue on going to church and believing in the Lord, this has helped me gain more of a relationship with God because it felt like he was my best friend. Like I would write him letters, I would talk to him every day and be like, hey God, like this, I'm doing this today. Like, what do you think about this? Or what would be some other things? Like if I was having a bad day, I'd be like, Lord, I'm just having a really bad day today. Like this person did this, like, I don't know what to do with this. Or I want to mend this friendship with this person. I think that's one of the things that helped me more after like I wasn't constantly going to church with my family after that, and moving out, and then encountering friendships with like Theus and Daisy when I first met them. And then after I started becoming an adult and we're still like engaging in trying to grow more in Christ as well, that has helped me a lot. Like the theological questions that Theus would ask us like in church, it really makes you think instead of the basic cookie cutter questions, like the questions that he would bring up, or like Ronnie or anybody else would bring up. It really would get you thinking like, wow, it's more than just what we think this box of Christianity is. So that was my take of that.
Yeah, and bouncing off that, just even talking with people about their viewpoints, because you learn so much from just asking people questions and listening to them versus trying to tell them, hey, you need to know Jesus. And I think that for me has really highlighted a lot of areas in my life that I was very, I don't want to say prejudiced against, I can't think of the right word, but I was very ignorant to all these different perspectives until we did start asking those questions, and then we started listening and actually like really focusing on what people were saying and then reflecting that off of our beliefs and trying to understand where we were at with that, and if we need an adjustment with how we viewed things, or if we needed to just have more of a conversation to figure out what was going on. And I really valued that.
That's really neat to get to a point where you can think about, am I thinking the right way? Is my perception right? Where not everybody thinks they might need to change.
Right.
It's the outside world needs to change to me instead of maybe I need to change a little bit to fit, not necessarily to fit in, but to perceive the world correctly. So that's really interesting. Kui, let me bounce this one off you first. What has God given you as a purpose or a thing, and where are you on that journey to following those leadings from the Lord?
I feel like my purpose or dream would be I love helping out and learning about different cultures of people and countries and stuff like that. So I feel like my dream is I already told a lot of people this, work in the United Nations and help out with the human rights department in that area too, because I love learning about, like I said, I love learning about different cultures and stuff. I got a chance to go and work with an organization called YWAM, Youth with a Mission in Nashville. That piqued my interest as well, with learning about international crises and stuff that's been going on in the world. We stayed in the YWAM Nashville base for 2 or 3 months, and then we ended up going to Mexico for the last 2 remaining months to help build houses for certain families, or we went to rehabilitation places to talk to people and gain a relationship with them and tell them about the Lord and stuff like that. So that's, I don't know, for me, that brought a sense of peace and love to me. Like, I love engaging in that type of stuff with people. So, as you know, well, the viewers don't know, but I'm actually going back to school to get a degree, a bachelor's degree, or maybe a master's degree in international relations, and hopefully further that dream into going to UN and being in that department. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a very interesting choice of work, but I can see having a very, very big impact on not just individual cultures, but the world. And that's really nice. So to bounce that off you, Daisy, what has God given you as a goal or a thing or a passion that you have been able to go after?
For me, it's not so much like a job title, I guess, but more of an encourager for people, someone who, I love setting people up for success. So like when our friends tell us, hey, here's something I really want to do, I'm quick to be like, okay, what are you doing? What are your plans? What do you have set up? What are your resources? Let's figure this out. And I know I can be pretty bullheaded about it sometimes, and God is definitely teaching me to calm down, slow down, let people find their own path. But I really have a passion for hearing people out about what their dreams or their goals are, and then saying, how can I support you? How can I get you there? What do you need from me? And that's something that he's been working on me for the past 10 years or so. I've definitely moved from what I thought God wanted me to do, which turned out to be just me wanting me to be successful, and turning that into what God really wants, which has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the people in my life and just me being that support structure for them, which I actually end up loving more than what I thought I was wanting to do. So that's definitely life-changing, but I enjoy it. I love pushing people.
Yeah.
To that, she's been a really good, helpful person to me, especially helped me with my schoolwork. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. It really helps to have a good support system like that. So I appreciate it.
Yay. I just need to learn to let you figure things out sometimes.
Well, it kind of goes without saying too much, but you two are very, very close friends. And not just because we're in the same church, but you guys have fostered a very nice relationship and helped each other along the way in many things, like you guys just said.
Oh, yeah.
So Love and Grace is is, besides the title of the podcast, it is a complete new way of, at least from a Christian's point of view. I grew up in Assemblies of God church, you growing up in a Catholic church, and Kui growing up in what kind of church actually did you grow up in, Kui? Do you remember?
It's a non-denominational.
Okay, non-denominational. So from those points of view, switching to a grace, love and grace point of view of the world, and seeing that in the Bible over and over, the Lord Jesus working and showing love and grace towards people who didn't deserve it, and all those things. What has that changed in your life? What's changed in your life from those new understandings of Christianity?
For me, it's been learning to let go of rules, especially in terms of grace, just giving people more grace and understanding that, not every rule is necessary. And I definitely learned that from working with youth, just learning to let go and let people redefine rules, I guess, is a good way to put it. And Kui has been super helpful with teaching me how to be more loving and, thinking of ways of how can I love on this person, versus just, okay, you're a person, cool, you're over there, I'm over here. Because she is really good at reaching out to people, asking the right questions, and making sure that they're okay. And that's really influenced me. Just definitely focusing on reaching out to people in a loving way versus just a very cold check-in. And then understanding that rules are not always necessary, because coming from a Catholic background, everything is rules. There's a rule for every single tiny situation that you encounter. And then going through youth and getting rid of rules completely, just completely radical idea of no rules, and that shook me. But in the long run, it makes sense why I put rules on love.
Were you in the meeting that we've referenced a few times in the podcast, but the meeting where the youth leadership was, or Theus was pushing, it's like, hey, we need to look at the no rules. Were you in that meeting? Mm-hmm. For some reason, I was so focused on my little world being completely blown apart and trying to think, well, but I was with the people. It's like, well, you got to have some rules, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it just that was a very heated meeting.
It's very emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even at home when he was first talking about it, I was like, Theus, you're crazy. Teenagers need rules. What are you talking about? And he went with it. And yeah, during that meeting, I think everybody was feeling it. Just, what do you mean no rules? Everybody needs rules. What are you talking about? But that was exactly what was needed. So
that was a very interesting time, going from the rules to no rules. Kui, what do you remember that transition that we had in the youth when it went from, hey, no frontal hugs, hey, no this, no that, to we just love you?
I do remember that. I know it was like, at first it's like, the first rule, like no frontal hugs and all that stuff. And then when we finally went to like, oh, it's okay. Cause like, I remember, I forget who said it. Maybe it was Theus. They're just like, if we set rules for the youth, we have to be the example as well. So if we're not doing that example, how are they going to follow what we're doing? And so when that rule was like taken away, it was just like, when we would like see each other, we're just like, are we able to? Or should we sigh? Like, are we okay with hugging? Like, I don't like, it was so like, are we going to get in trouble still? Like, are they trying to trick us here? So it was one of those, but after a while, we just, I don't know. I feel like everybody was still okay. Like the rules, I understand why rules were set in place, but at the same time, it was very restricted. But now I felt like after that, it was more like everybody was more themselves, more loving in a way towards each other, instead of feeling like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, and feeling like you're in this little bubble.
Yeah, I really saw the difference in the youth when it went from like, okay, you had the few people that were they were hard to connect with, and they, we had a rule, hey, walking in the halls during service, and they would just go off and walk in the halls. Hey, don't be on your phone in the middle of service, and they'd be in the back of the rooms and sitting there texting with a friend or whatever. And when we switched away from the rules, I remember those specific people were jumping in and connecting with hey, we're going to do a game. They were normally the last person that would jump in on a game and do something. But they was like, oh yeah, I want to be a part. I want to be in, because I don't know if it was that realizing, hey, you're accepted no matter what's going on. We're not looking at you as you've got to follow the rules. But it was wonderful seeing that transition in the people, in the students. So
yeah. And even to go beyond that, even just the rules of, we have 1 hour to do service. We're going to do 10 minutes of introductions, 20 minutes of worship, 30 minutes of the message. Breaking away from that rule was really hard for me, because my mindset was, the parents are waiting. We need to go. Get these kids out of here. I want to go home. Let's go. We only have a set hour. And Thea's, his mindset was, they want to be here, so let's be here for them, so they can enjoy this atmosphere. And I remember that being incredibly hard for me, because I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. Like, get these kids out. And his mindset was, well, they want to hang out with us, so let's hang out. And it took me forever to figure that out. But when we started seeing the cliques break away, when we started seeing people who never hung out with before starting to interact, that's when I was like, oh, okay. So we don't need all these specific time frames of, you can only talk to each other for 10 minutes. Let's let them talk for an hour if they need it. That's great. And we've been continuing that even today. Sometimes we don't have worship. Actually, most times we don't have traditional music type of worship. Our worship is communicating with each other, getting to know each other on deeper levels that 10 years ago we probably would have been like, all right, cool, I don't know what to do with that. Why are you telling me this? So that's been pretty cool to see.
Also, bouncing off of the time frames and everything, when we used to have like a set hour of worship, when we broke out of that and just had worship for longer than that, you can see, I don't know, I felt like we were being more heard, because if people wanted to more worship and to pray more, I felt like they felt listened to, instead of like, oh, the parents are outside, like we need to hurry up and go out there and let the parents come and pick them up and stuff like that. I felt like when we broke away from all the rules, it felt like the youth was finally being heard in what they needed within the youth group and the church. So I don't know. I felt like that was a big breakthrough as well.
Yeah. And even when we started setting up prayer nights, that was, I remember we got huge backlash from that, from other adults, but the youth, I was really surprised with how many teenagers wanted to spend a Tuesday night in church, and they weren't there for 10 minutes sitting on their phone. They were engaged the entire hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long we were there. We didn't set a time limit. It was just, if you want to pray, if you want to worship, the door's open, come in. And there were so many youth who would show up, and it blew my mind. That really radicalized my understanding of Jesus and of love. There are no rules. And it's funny, looking back, Jesus came to break all the rules, and he only set specific rules about love, and that's what we did there. And it took so long for me to understand that. It's crazy.
I love looking back on things that were very important into changing the way I thought to where I am now. Those little things, just even just going to the same church as you guys. We both got to that church at about the same time.
Yeah.
You guys moving from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was amazing to see those little things, this after that, and all pushing in a direction to, if you want to get really personal, it's like to make me a better person than I was before. But I got better relationships. I will say most of the people I grew up with in that church. I say grew up with, and I was there for 10 or so years. Yeah. And just the relationships, just building those relationships more than just someone, I see you on Sunday, hi. Mm-hmm. But, hey, can you help me with this thing on Tuesday? Or, hey, can you help me with this thing on Saturday? So being more involved in someone's life than just seeing them for an hour at church on Sunday. Yeah.
And knowing that if anything comes up from I need money to I was in a car accident, everybody will literally drop everything and say, hey, what do you need from me? Mm-hmm. And I think that's rare. You can't find that with such a large group of people, maybe one or two close friends, but we have 20 mm-hmm. or so people and growing who, if anything happens to anyone, every single person will say, what do you need? I will be there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's beautiful that we've been able to create that atmosphere.
And honestly, those are probably one of the best moments back in youth group, how we were such a big family back there, like a large group of youth people, a family. It literally felt like a family back there. And it was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you go from, a friend, you're like, okay, we talk to you every once in a while. But when you come to the point where you get into a family relationship where it's, you'll do anything for that person. Mm-hmm. For instance, when Ronnie moved from Cambridge, there was a big bunch of us that just all went over and helped him move.
In the middle of the night. I think it was midnight.
It was midnight when we...
January 1st, because that's what Thea's told him, and that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just thinking back on all those little things, just it's being the body. Mm-hmm. How God said, hey, you're a part of the body. There's a lot of people, a lot of parts to this body, but you need to take care of. If you stub your pinky toe into something, your whole body's like, oh dang, that hurts. How can I fix this? And you're hopping around on one foot or whatever, trying to ease whatever pain is there. That's the whole mindset. We all, I don't want to say we all hurt for each other, but we all want to make whatever the thing is better. Mm-hmm. And it's a family or a body feel instead of like, a prayer list. Hey, so-and-so's gotten hurt. Let's just pray for them.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't belittle prayer lists and prayer chains and stuff like that. Just there's another level beyond.
There's action.
There's action versus just praying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us on this 5th edition of the Love and Grace podcast. I want to thank Daisy Aspiras for being with us and Marquetta Day for showing up with us as well. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed that.
Have a great time. Yeah.
Guys, if you want, subscribe to YouTube. We have our audio podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we're on Facebook and Twitter. So look for us out there and please engage. Ask us questions. We want to bounce questions off our guests that you send us as well. So again, guys, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the Love and Grace Podcast.